I call Dr. David Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in support of the Accountancy Infrastructure Reform Bill, the AIR Bill, as referred to by the Minister. The Minister's stated objective with the bill, the fair, effective and transparent functioning of our markets, is an admirable one, and insofar as this bill supports that, we are keen to add our support on this side of the House. The opening up of audit activities to competition, effectively, trans-Tasman, to ensure that standards are consistent between Australia and New Zealand, introduces an interesting dynamic into the audit world. It comes with risks and with opportunities. One would hope that our New Zealand firms and our New Zealand-based firms will take advantage of the opportunity to secure business in the audit area through being competitive, professional, and indeed just generally good at what they do. The risk, of course, is that the business of audit becomes concentrated in larger, more successful firms in Australia, as we have seen in our banking sector. There are always risks that accompany opportunity. The good provisions that are in here are actually about simplifying things, about making things more transparent, and one hopes that New Zealand's interest as new accounting standards are set are taken into account in a proportionate or more than proportionate manner, so that the accounting standards are suitable for New Zealand purposes. Something that we have observed on the Commerce Committee in the past and on the Finance and Expenditure Committee is an increasing requirement for reporting that is more detailed, more complex and more expensive. And the intention behind that increased reporting generally is to ensure greater protection for consumers and to ensure that effective, transparent and fair functioning of markets. We are reminded again and again, I'm sure others in this House as often as I am, by constituents, by business people and by those in the accounting profession who have a mind to the future and to the better interests of our country, that the overcomplication of financial reporting requirements can hinder the productivity of our business sector. And so I ask that those who implement this law that we are supporting here, and which I expect will pass through the House relatively non-controversially, will take note of this Parliament's wish that they don't overly complicate matters when it comes to audit and reporting, that indeed they are taking into account the interest that we have in seeing that fair, efficient and transparent market without being overly burdensome in their requirements. And I don't hear any loud objections from the other side of the House on this point. It is something that I think we will all agree on. And on this side of the House, we're always motivated to see a fairer system in place, to see red tape reduced. And again, here, the opportunity to simplify standards across the Tasman will mean a reduction in red tape for people that do business on both sides of the Tasman. It will make New Zealand firms potentially more competitive, as they are only complying with one set of standards with products that they export rather than two in the broadest sense. Now, the trick comes when the bigger neighbour who dominates the professional body sets the standards if they are not in our interest. We see this in things like the housing sector when it comes to setting common standards for the building industry. New Zealand is sometimes on the wrong end of the deal, where standards that are appropriate in Alice Springs or Brisbane may be different to those required in Gore or in Invercargill. Different priorities, different materials. It's not that cold in Brisbane, Mr. Robertson. Gore's a lovely place and a nice place to visit. It is the case that we want to see standards that are open to the interests that are represented across the professional body. Now, I'd like to congratulate NZECA on their work in bringing a full submission. That's a body that makes a very constructive, in my experience, contribution to the legislation that we put through Parliament. I note in my own field of tax simplification, or where my interest lies, NZICA have had a proposition on the table for many years which would see our tax system in New Zealand simplified, that would reduce red tape for businesses, that would make sure that we're not performing compliance unnecessarily. They are a body that is open to expressing New Zealand's wider interests, where in the case of tax simplification they may actually lose professional fees through suggesting a more simple tax reporting process. That proposal of theirs, I have to say, hasn't been addressed by this government, and that is a personal disappointment that I have. I speak to many constituents who feel aggrieved that they have to prepare retrospective accounts for their businesses that add no value. When they are a small business, they are simply for tax compliance purposes. So I'd appeal to the people on the other side of the House who are pushing through this bill on making the market and audit fair, effective and transparent, that they also look at the other suggestions that the Institute of Chartered Accountants has brought. They, I know, are setting up a tax simplification board at present, and Minister Macleay has expressed the desire to proceed with this work, but I would suggest that this work has not proceeded fast enough. We know very well that this proposal has been around for years, and that Minister Macleay is pushing a lot of useful tax work out beyond the election, because this government hasn't repaired the IRD's tax system, hasn't upgraded it in time to handle the kinds of changes that would actually make life a lot simpler for New Zealand small business, that would enable business in New Zealand to get on with doing the things that they're good at, that add to our exports, that add to our gross domestic product, that mean that we can afford the kinds of infrastructure in New Zealand that ensures that future generations get ahead, that hospitals and schools are funded to an adequate standard so that kids can have the opportunities that those of us sitting in the House had once upon a time when we were attending school or had to attend a hospital. Mr. Speaker, an economy that works for all New Zealanders is something on this side of the House that we want to support at every occasion. We're told by the professional bodies that this will make their life easier. We want to see a fair and just society where all live in dignity. In the Labour Party, we have a view about equity of access. We hope that that will be taken care of as professionals deal with these audit requirements, that they have an eye to making sure that they are accessible to everyone, that the legalese and the technical aspects of audit compliance are kept to a minimum, that an eye is kept out for those who are new business people, who are small business people, who are people on the margins of requiring new processes and accountabilities as they wrestle with their need to be fair, effective and transparent participants in a market. We look forward to seeing this bill pass through. Reducing red tape is something that we always support. Not enough of it happens at the moment. As small business spokesperson for the Labour Party, I visit businesses all the time affected by unnecessary regulation. It hampers New Zealand's competitiveness internationally, and it's something this government hasn't worked hard enough to address. Tax simplification is another one, making our tax system compliant and useful and easy to access for our citizens so that they can hand over their information securely, not worried about the kind of privacy breaches that have dogged this government over recent years, must be a priority. We need a functional tax system. We need these functional audit capabilities. We need a government with energy. Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that people watching this broadcast, following the accounting standards, accounting infrastructure reform bill at home on their TVs, are considering that it's important to change the government, to vote for a Labour government that will see a fairer, more just society in future.
I call Jonathan Young.
Well, thank you very much. A pleasure to stand and speak at the second reading of the